Why is Nepal in chaos right now? Right now, things in Nepal are in chaos, but this is not the usual kind of turmoil. As you know, unrest often arises when tensions grow between the people and the government. However, the situation in Nepal is very different. The government building was set on fire. The finance minister was captured and thrown into a river. Protesters didn't just target the government building. Multiple public institutions were set ablaze. The former prime minister's wife tragically lost her life in one of these arsons. Some ministers fled the country by helicopter. So far, 22 people have died in the ongoing clashes. The prime minister resigned, yet protests are still continuing. So what triggered such an explosion of anger? And what lessons can we draw from these events? To understand why people acted this way, we first need to look at the actions of those who brought the country to this point. Nepal is a tiny country surrounded by mountains, located at a very high altitude, and famous for Mount Everest. During my Asia travels, I considered visiting Nepal, but costs were high because it's not a major tourist destination. Yet within this small country, a very large problem existed: nepotism and the corruption of politicians siphoning public funds. Nepotism, simply put, is favoritism, appointing people to positions they don't deserve just because they are known to you. Luxurious lifestyles and extravagance, while the Nepali people live in severe poverty, were rampant among politicians. For instance, there's the Lalita Nivas land scandal. This land, home to the prime minister's residence and other state buildings, was illegally transferred to politicians and business people using forged documents. Over 300 individuals were investigated, but nothing ever happened. There was also refugee fraud. Hundreds of people were charged money under the promise of sending them to the U.S. as refugees. Even a former interior minister was involved. Cooperative funds collected by citizens were embezzled by politicians, again involving former ministers. In another case, the foreign minister transferred state land to their private property. Documents disappeared, and the matter surfaced years later. In short, no matter who came to power, public money was being plundered. Now let's move to September 29th, 2024, and the background that triggered this explosion. The Supreme Court of Nepal ruled that social media platforms could be required to register in Nepal. About a year later, on August 28th, the Ministry of Communications gave platforms 7 days to comply. On September 4th, mass blocking began. On that single night, 26 platforms, including Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, WhatsApp, and LinkedIn, were blocked nationwide. For Nepal, this was not only a technical measure, but a societal blackout. Journalistic organizations and human rights groups strongly condemned the move. The government claimed it was protecting its citizens, but this was just a story. In reality, they wanted to control criticism and prevent people from seeing dissenting voices. On September 7th, citizens submitted petitions to the court, but the Supreme Court didn't even register them, leaving the streets as the only recourse. On September 8th, just 2 days later, a major explosion of anger occurred. Tens of thousands took to the streets of Kathmandu. Police first used water cannons, tear gas, and plastic bullets, and in some areas, live ammunition. The 22 fatalities I mentioned earlier were caused by live rounds. Curfews were imposed, and the army was deployed. That same night, the government was forced to lift the social media ban. Pressure had worked. The interior minister resigned, but anger did not subside. On September 9th, a different political rupture occurred. Angry crowds set fire to the federal parliament building and politicians' homes. Flights were disrupted. The army tried to secure the parliament area. Today, curfews are extended, and the government has sent dialogue messages, but trust has been shattered. Neighboring India, observing closely, reminded the region of the wider implications. The backbone of the street movement was Generation Z. Youth unemployment in Nepal is around 22%, and people are living at or below the poverty line. Meanwhile, children of politicians, referred to as Nepo babies, live lavish lives. I checked Nepal's TikTok, and these Nepo babies showcase their luxury, sparking outrage among young people of similar age. Corruption, unemployment, lack of accountability, a stark divide between extreme wealth and poverty, the stripping away of even social media freedom, all of these factors fueled the eruption. After these dramatic events, either the army will impose harsher measures and people will gradually return home, or despite repression, citizens will stay on the streets and push for real change. This is how the people of Nepal reacted. Thank you for listening. This is what happened in Nepal. Take care and see you next time.